It's not a bad use of Smarty. The trouble is, why are you going to have this templating system in a system that has templates already? So that makes no sense to me. But again, I'm stuck with it. It also has some other problems because the way the Smarty gets parsed, it was having difficulty for us to drop any PHP into it, which we'll get to later on with Henk. So, and there's no cart system on the website. And as factory, there's no cart system, as I mentioned before. So they couldn't buy and sell products. So what was needed? Well, because these are people who don't have a business, we need a reverse cart. We can't have someone who goes and pays for a product and expect the seller to still have it. So we have to check at the last minute, does the seller have it? So the new system will have to send us some notification that says, hey, somebody wants to buy your product, do you still want to sell it? If you answer yes, then the buyer gets the buyer. If the seller says no or ignores it, he'll get another message, and one more after that. Finally, we'll delist it, just ignoring us, and they don't really care. And especially when dealing with very high-end baby items, a lot of those people have a certain attitude that they don't have the time for this. They need something then, but they're here as opposed to Craigslist because they don't want to be with the hoi polloi in Craigslist. And one of the things we want to do, other problems we need is how do you set up the system so it's easy? One thing that frustrates me is when I used to do eBay and I said, someone wants to support your product, I then click and log on to eBay. That's annoying. I know it's my email address, I know it's secure. I would love to have a one-time hash. So I get the email, I click on it, a hash is a way of encoding information in a link. I click on that, I go right to the site, I'm logged in. It's very similar to when you get an email where you change your password. If they're going to trust it for your passwords, they must well trust it for everything else. That leads you to the fact is make sure you have your primary email address, you have a nice, long, complicated password, because that's really the key to your entire life these days. And we want to plan for the future, and we want to have, we want to do a messaging system. If we send emails and the buyer and seller knows who they are, they can still cut us out. So we want to keep them behind closed doors without them knowing who each other is. Of course, they can put it into the messaging, but guess what? They put it into the messaging, we can scan through the messages and find out people are doing that. And we can start parsing out email addresses and other stuff if we have to. And there's not a hell of a lot we can do to really stop people from doing this. We know that. So eventually we're going to synthesize the buyer, who's the one who's not paying the fee, to be honest, and say the sale went through by giving them coupons and so forth. Because guess what? Babies are real expensive. They use a lot of diapers, a lot of formula, and I don't care who you are, you'll be happy to get free coupons. Of course, on the other hand, when we go into the escrow system, the buyer may not want to say that they bought the items, they get the money back, so they keep them honest. So we work in that system out also. So what I did, first thing I said before I went through, I compared all the code. I wanted to see if any code was incorrect, and I ran a diff, and I found lots of little things. Some of them were just minor comments and other crap. I think it didn't make a difference. And I fixed the 1.5 site. It was also having problems called a zero-sum problem. They had something that was trying to divide a number by 0, which doesn't really work. And if you remember, like from Star Trek and other shows from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the computer burns up and self-destructs. That really does happen. It starts using all the processing power to try and divide by 0, gets frustrated, and it just stops working. So we cleaned that up. We cleaned a lot of little problems. When I was looking at the error log, which I'm giving a talk on tomorrow, there were literally every second from one little click on the page, 500-600 errors. So I cleaned up most of them. There are a couple of the residual ones. They're just images and stuff I really don't care about. We'll eventually get to them. It's not important. It's not causing functionality problems. And we started to work on the new template, which you see now. And then we rebuilt the site in 2.5. And we found the PM system. There's not many in the Joomla world.
How's it going?
It's the PM system component is called PM, or private message. And that allows you intra-site messaging. And it's pretty well built module components. Does most of our functionality. It was built for a different purpose. Now, of course, in the world of Joomla, things are built one way, but guess what? We can modify it and change it to what we want. Common solutions in Joomla and outside Joomla are overly complicated messes that you don't use 90% of the functionality.
Outside.
What?
Outside.
You say that again?
Outside Joomla.
Well, Joomla doesn't matter where you go because they have to build something that's universal. So you can have sizes, attributes. I just want a simple cart so I can put one item in and check it out. Okay. Simple K, which is built by Henk, is a plugin. So when you drop it in, it puts in a little bit of a source code, similar to the way PayPal works, and says, when I click on this, this item goes into my cart. And you can set it up by putting whatever you want to have it in. And I started speaking to Henk from last year, and we started talking about it. I said, look, I think your solution modified to do what we need to do. I need to add extra functionality before they put it into the cart, or kind of during. I need to be able to send a message from the buyer to the seller saying somebody wants to buy a product. And then I want to be able to have the ability, since the vast majority of the buyers are going to be women, and women and men shop differently. Okay. Men, because we're descended from hunters, we go out and the first thing we can kill, the closest to the food we want to eat, we grab and that's it, and we're done. Women, on their hand, were the first farmers. They look at it and compare which is the best thing for them. So to me, I think a woman wants to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they may look at 4 or 5 cribs they're looking to buy and compare the ones. Now, it may be the same crib, but you may want to speak to 1 or 2 and get the good vibe of the previous owners, especially if you're putting an infant into it. So I want to have a place, I have a system where I can take an item, put it into a cart, compare it, then send a note out to the seller that I want to buy this item, let the seller come back, tell me he wants to sell it, then buy it. And during this time, my client and I would not decide how are we going to monetize this. Are we going to use the buyers and sellers PayPal accounts? Are we going to do escrow or something else? We finally decided doing an escrow system so that we get our 10 or 15%, and we can adjust it. And then we have other functionality. We have people coming called TaskRabbit that can deliver it because, frankly, I don't want to disassemble a crib myself. Those days are when I was much younger. I would say, oh yeah, let me spend half a day. I want someone knows how to take the crib down, pack it up, bring it to the person, and the other person doesn't want to learn how to build it. If you're listening to IKEA, you know what I'm talking about. You get a headache after that, working on that. So those are the solutions we have. And it turns out when Henk took over, we start looking at Ads Factory. It turns out Ads Factory has a long lost cousin in parts of Simple Caddy and its predecessor, and something that an auction functionality that he built. And they took his base code, didn't really understand what they were doing to some extent, just kept on adding functionality and distorting it. And that's why you have the Ads Factory now, which is, it's not, as I said, I didn't build it, so I've never used that in the first place. I'm kind of stuck with it for now. My feeling is that I want to get rid of it 100%, and I'm looking at the Joomla 3.0, and my suggestion is that we start rebuilding everything in the 3.0 model, unified content model, and then we get all the functionality and extend it much easier, so we're having more and more difficulty changing Ads Factory to what we want. We need to have buyer and seller dashboards, and that has to call in functionality from Ads Factory, from Simple Caddy if you're a seller, and the private messaging system. If you're a buyer, you're only talking about Simple Caddy and the private messaging system. They all have to be interconnected. And Henk and I are developing, we kind of made a lot of plugins that plug in together. But I think you agree to me, even though we're doing a good job, it's kind of looking like the power strips at a place with lots of people working. We have everyone plugged in, and this is plugged to this, and this is plugged in, and you know, it's getting to be the point where it's going to have a point of failure. And that's so far the presentation on reCrib. I'll show you a little bit about reCrib, the two versions. And I'll let Henk ask some questions, and if Henk has anything to say about it also. Okay, so this is, I'm going to go to the present reCrib. Okay. And I'm going to log on. This, by the way, this is a new thing that just happened. I don't know how that happens. I think Facebook changed the size of their icon. And yes, we down put Pinterest on things because, you know, that's the news, therefore your clients demand it. And they don't want to listen to it. One of my test accounts. Emily has very little concern about cribs, although if she saw one, she'd probably go to sleep in it. And if she'd be purring, she's a cat. So, if I want to buy something right now, I can buy. These are all real items, so I'm not going to click on it, and you can search by the way, there's a lot of functionality in the back end, searching by zip codes and by styles, and a lot of this has been changed. I go here, and I connect with the seller, I type in the message, and that's the end. That's the end of reCrib. They're no longer part of the transaction. We have no idea how many sales came through in the system. We have no idea if people are interacting. We have found some people make some sales. Now I'm going to log out. Show you the new version.
$1,200 for a crib, huh? Wow.
That's cheap.
It is?
Yeah. There is a stroller, and it's an amazing piece of work. $4,000. But
Titanium?
includes, no, it includes, as you go pushing it, and dynamos or recharge your cell phone. Okay? It gives the kid a media console so he can play with his own iPad. It has pneumatics so it can go up and down so that you don't lift the baby up, move it up. I mean, it looks like out of Star Wars. Okay? That's sorry, a stroller. Not a stroller. Okay? My stroller was a little one. I could probably have trouble with it today. It was probably the size of this, almost the size of this table, giant wheels, and lots of places to slice your finger open.
Yep.
I mean, look at this thing. You know, you get something very luxurious. I didn't know there were off-road strollers and on-road and road strollers. What the hell's an off-road stroller?
Kind of like a mountain bike for kids.
Yeah.
That's the one that you take, you push, and you hope that it goes far away, all by itself.
Uh-huh.
a lot more Facebook to make my life easier. By the way, the person I was talking to before, this is his module. There we go. Okay. So if I want to buy something, I'm just going to show my cart. This is a beta site, so on your message, don't send a message. So something's being moved around here as we speak. Possibly flushed through the data out of the system. Yeah, I'll buy this. Nice
Looks
kid.
like it.
Kid.
Okay. I look here. New pages will actually have better SEO. Okay, so this goes to the buyer's dashboard. So now I can send a message, ask them a question. And ask the seller a question. Okay. Or I can now just buy now, and now it's in the message says, so-and-so, a customer wants to buy a product you want to sell. And it says they'll get it, that goes to private messaging, the private messaging will send the email out. The email will have a link. If they click on that link, it says yes, that will trigger a number of events. That will trigger another private message to the buyers. It's a done deal. Send them in with a link so they can to the shopping to the checkout page and update everything. So one of the things that I'm going to be working on, we talked about, and I think was in the application session, is it's called a triggers and rules module or events. There's no real way of doing that. There's a lot of triggers that happen in Joomla. There's no way to specifically set up that when you do this event, these items happen. So this session is a kind of different session than most because it's always the inner workings of what you do when you get a Joomla site and things you can and things you can do with it. And you can do almost anything you want with the Joomla site. You start seeing how all the other pieces fit in. A lot of spinning wheels, a lot of gears, things have to tie in. It's not all just install components. When I first began, I get frustrated. Oh, use that component. I'll get the extension, load it up, and find out. Does 40, 50, 60, 80% of what I want. Doesn't do 100%. You can't expect it to do 100% because someone else built it for their own purpose, thought this is great, and uploaded it. It's up to you to modify it. I'm ask around, we don't have that many people. So what type of sites do you work on?
I mostly do PTA sites and with my husband's business.
Okay, what does your husband do?
He has a temp agency, so
Okay.
it's not anything selling or anything.
No, but you have a similar type of thing. If you have a temp agency, you may want to post positions, but you don't want those positions to be known.
That's true. And you don't want the clients to be.
Right, so you don't want that to be known. So you have a similar thing that you don't want the username to be known anywhere. You need to look at the source code, and then you may want to be able to correspond back and forth with people. And you may even have a case where, while you're moderating, you may want the possible applicant to speak to the possible company, and so maybe yours would have a slightly different traffic situation in it. You might have, when they respond, it stops, queues up to you, and you send it through. That way they can ask relevant questions, so your husband doesn't have to play telephone, sit back and forth, asking a million questions, depending on what level of work they're doing. All different things. And so at the Murray Hill Conference Center, what do you do for them?
We have events, 3 days to 3 weeks long. People stay there, they have meals, everything.
Okay.
Quite nice. And this is just people to sign up. And we use DT register right now.
Okay.
And it's,
So DT Register has some functionality. It's not bad, basic. We've used DT Register and a few other ones to set up the Joomla days in the past. I haven't really found one that really satisfied all my needs. I think J Events with RSVP Pro is getting closer. Still having some issues with it, but it's kind of new. But see, once again, 2 cases where there's kind of not really e-commerce. You're listing items that people are checking out. So both cases, you're stuck in the same conundrum. You have things built for one purposeful build item. You can't expect them to build for everyone. So how do you start modifying it? So that's one thing it's trying to show you is listen what your needs, figure out your needs first. Too many people find an extension, then change their problems to fit that extension. What do you do back there?
Bit of everything. Like for a couple of large teaching union organisations, schools, e-commerce sites. We've got at the moment sites using it. I've got a couple with Simple Caddy, a couple with WordPress, a couple with Tanda.
Okay.
And I was actually pretty keen on the main teachers union side. I run 14,000 members in having this sort of system where people could actually trade and sell resources to each other or various
Which
things.
teachers union?
It's West Australian Teachers Union.
Okay. My friend runs the UFT.org in New York.
Oh, cool.
That's a Drupal site.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she asks me questions sometimes. I can't go beyond that because, I mean, no matter what you say, no matter how confidential, there are times when we all speak to each other, but we do the trust. What do you think of Tienda? Because I know Raphael, whatever happened to him, he seemed to have disappeared off the face of the
Yeah,
planet.
it was really promising a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It seems to ground to a halt. However, the 2 sites that use it trade very successfully with it. However, it's just sort of, it seems to have dropped off. I wouldn't install it into anything at the moment simply because the support doesn't seem to be happening, which is a shame because I thought at the time it absolutely killed Virtuemart as far as a big shopping cart was concerned.
I tend to agree. I was looking at Red Shop. It's nice. It works well. The trouble is it's built for the Belgium postal system, and so you get there and the big Belgium or some other country and kind of stuck with stuff you don't need. So I'm bringing Henk up. One of the things we're trying to be doing with Simple Caddy is trying to extend it some more so that wherever functionality is, you just snap it into place. So what are you talking about when we were speaking, what problems we had?
Well, the first problem that we had was trying to get Simple Caddy to work. Well, Simple Caddy works, that's one thing. One of the problems is that Simple Caddy works based on plugins. Joomla plugins need Joomla content to work. The only problem is that, well, not this, but the first page of the buyer, you go and navigate a bit. The first page where you say buy or connect with seller, that's nice, but it is not Joomla. It's far from it. It was done, not the details, but any details that'll do. This is done using Smarty templates. Smarty templates might be a good idea for some people, but using them inside Joomla, replacing the templates that Joomla already has in place, also replaces all of the Joomla functionality. So a simple plugin call that would display this button, it displays the plugin code and that's it. So, and it doesn't get replaced, it doesn't get activated. The triggers that Joomla uses to activate all those plugins and to display whatever the plugin needs to display are not triggered in that system. So the first problem was, okay, what do we need from the SimpleCaddy plugin for this to work? So it ended up that we only used a very small part of it. So most of the fancy SimpleCaddy display functions like options, drop-downs, quantity boxes, all that stuff, we didn't need it. Basically what we need is the bunch of hidden fields that use the SimpleCaddy functionality. A button, and that's it. So the first problem was, how do we get that in there? Because, well, the button is not simply a button. It also has to have the number of the ad. That it is displayed doesn't mean that I get it, that I can get it. So I have to find a way to extract this data and get it underneath this button. Can you display the, oops, that's not the one.
And get rid of his Skype on.
Yeah. That's better. So what we needed to do was to get rid of the Smarty functions and simply more or less hard code into this template the functionality that we needed from SimpleCaddy. So if you could display the source code of this element, that would be nice. No, inspect element.
Oh, sorry.
Right click the button.
I know. Come on.
If you can.
Oh, you know, it's only down here.
Oh, yeah. Well, once you start using a decent browser, that would be better. Okay. So basically what we are going to use is the standard code, not generated by the plugin, but simply the strict minimum of what we need. The second problem is, okay, well now we got it into the SimpleCaddy card system. The second problem is we need to find a way to PM the seller. That somebody is interested. That is not something that is natively inside SimpleCaddy. So that had to be programmed as well. Happily, the PM system that Scott found has an API that is capable of doing everything from generating a new message to sending out the email to the other party. That is perfect. That came in very handy because now my coding skills are limited to one line. Perfect, all that I need. Then we have a problem, that is that SimpleCaddy stores the cart in a session cookie. That's the way that it has to be. Standard cookies are too limited. Session cookies are not so limited, so I can store more information in there and have a decent cart system. Storing everything for SimpleCaddy reasons, storing everything in a database, then I also need to clean up the database if somebody doesn't order. Storing something in a database means that I need a user ID. So SimpleCaddy doesn't use the database for cart management. Over here we have a different idea. As soon as somebody wants to buy something, they have to log in. That's why Scott used his password 3 times, 4 times, 5. Oh, whatever. So, from there on, if people are logged in, I can store the contents of my cart, not simply in a session cookie, but I can leave it inside the database. Combined with the user ID of the login, the next time this user comes back, let's say that the husband is there to do a pre-selection of cribs or strollers or whatever. Then late at night comes home the wife from hard work. Look, honey, this is what I found. So he needs to get this list back. There's one thing that you need to store that list. With the user ID and the database, I have the list. The only thing is that if in the meantime one of these items has already been sold, well, the system needs to know this item is no longer available. So as soon as an item has been sold by the seller, we will disable all the messaging for this specific item. Because if the item has been sold, there's nothing more horrible than to still receive 50 emails saying, can you still sell it? I offer you more and this and that. No, that's not the way it goes. So from there on, as soon as an item has been sold, it has been not only delisted from Ads Factory, but it has also been removed from the PM system so that no communication is longer possible for that item. So that is a bunch of functionalities that we had to find because simply they are not in SimpleCaddy. SimpleCaddy wasn't made for that. The thing is that SimpleCaddy in this case was simple enough and flexible enough to add all kinds of codes and to just remodel it to what we need.
And that's one of those important things is that if you get a tool that does everything, it can do everything but can't do one thing really well. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a problem. But when there's some kind of all the complication that goes on behind the scenes, and if let's say we release this, who else but a peer-to-peer system needs this? And the other peer-to-peer system may be one that is kind of more of a store, like eBay-ish, where people build little mini businesses around it. So they have different functionality. So we built this built-in component and released it, and we think this is how great this is. Does everything we want, and you go to use it, the first thing to say is, this is great, but it doesn't really do what I want.
It's promising.
Yeah, and why do I need to have all this functionality? Or where's the functionality I need? I want different sizes. We don't have sizes because there's only one item. It is what it is. You know, so I mentioned Tienda, and I mentioned Redcart. They both are red shops, right? They both have a lot of functionality. You can add attributes, you add this and that. But you don't need that. So when you're trying to develop a site and work forward, one thing you really want to concentrate is what do I need, what can I find, what can I extend, what can I change? If you're not a developer, you're someone out of luck, as you know, okay? Or if you have a budget, you hire another person to do it. Now, in speaking to Henk, and we went back and forth, and there are times we had like an hour-long conversation on how to do something very minute. There's a lot that goes on here, and we're also trying to build for the future, so we also know the other functionality we're going to want for this. The escrow systems and probably use PayPal to do the merchant services, but now we need to build a system for accounting. Now that's not SimpleCaddy, but it all has to speak to each other because if we go and refund the money, guess what? It has to backtrack everything else. Or maybe a sale didn't go, maybe the buyer bought in escrow, arrived at the seller, looked at the item, decided they didn't really like it because it really wasn't as described, rejects it, and then we have to reverse everything so you can't make the seller relist the item. If you look, have the item delivered by TaskRabbit, that's been another item to add into the system that's going to have to be able to pick TaskRabbit's delivery system, that's going to have to pick it up from the SimpleCaddy item, because SimpleCaddy creates an item content just like you have any other content in the back end. And that's where it holds information because originally in the original system there was no real need for that, correct?
Exactly.
So now Henk invented a new way of storing information when you really didn't need it. Because most people using SimpleCaddy were selling multiple items. So all you had to retract was the sale, not the sale of a unique item. It's like, for instance, I hope you all really enjoyed the bagels this morning, building an inventory management system for them. Normally, a bagel has attributes to flavor. If you're ordering bagels, you can say what attributes, but in reality, when they send the raw dough out, it's either cinnamon raisin or it's not. So, in the parlance, even though when I realized they send out plain bagels, the most popular, because that's for sesame, poppy, so forth. But to make it understand, it's not a bagel with sesame seeds, it's a sesame bagel. That's different than a poppy bagel. So I'm trying to help you expand your mind when you think about Joomla, thinking how things are created, what's going on. Realize you really always create content of some sort. What else do we have with SimpleCAD that was perplexing? Probably the seller dashboard, the buyer dashboard.
Well, the buyer dashboard,
I can get that back up there.
it's a little bit like I said, it has to be stored on the server. So that even if the buyer didn't buy anything yet, he has this still available to him, because there's nothing worse than saying, okay, well, honey, I found a crib, wonderful, okay, where is it? Oh yeah, I have to look here, no, this wasn't the one. This one, no, this wasn't the one. Oh no, that is not going to work. That is something that will work perhaps once, but that's it. So storing the shopping cart on the server, it's not really a shopping cart. First of all, SimpleCAD, the shopping extension, is not going to do any collection of payment to begin with. Secondly, this, let's say, buyer's dashboard has to come up whenever it's necessary. So for this, storing it in a database, it's no longer a cart. So we rebaptize it as a wish list.
Right.
Finally, it ends up as being the buyer's dashboard. So that was another thing. At the same time, SimpleCAD being a shopping extension, it expects everybody to, or not everybody, it expects the administrator of the site to enter the products. Except that here it is the public who is entering the products. And even worse, not in SimpleCAD. So I had to find a way to say, okay, well, in Ads Manager or in Ads Factory, where it is entered, as soon as somebody clicks on an item that doesn't exist, I have to grab all the information from Ads Factory, create an on-the-fly product inside SimpleCAD, and make sure that that is working with the rest of the SimpleCAD files. Otherwise, pricing at 0, that's not a good idea.
And remember, Ads Factory is not an e-commerce platform in any shape or format. It's a classified ad system. So it has no idea what quantity is. There was no quantity in the system.
No.
And then even if you click on buy now, there could be 3 people who want to buy it. The seller's going to choose who he wants to sell it to. And so there's no real deprecation. That's why it's a reverse cart. There's no deprecation until the seller agrees to sell it and the buyer agrees to buy it. It's kind of like if you ever saw stock offerings, and the bottom of the stock offering says, offering by prospectus only. That's a reverse cart. Normally, you put your stuff on a table and say, I'm going to sell this, and people can say, yes, I do. No. In this case, the buyer comes and says, I want to buy that item. Will you sell it to me? So it gave a lot of interesting problems, which would probably be solved if we built it from the ground up, but I didn't have that choice because we were kind of, the site was having problems. They want to keep traction, they want to move ahead, and more importantly, they want to get some venture capital behind it because they need to be able to roll this out to locales around the country. And that once you start doing that, now you start having new issues. If the support ticket system you want to put in has to be tied into not only the Ads Factory item, but it has to be tied into SimpleCAD or wherever it wants to go through. So more and more things get tied into what's going on.
Well, it gave definitely occasions of, let's say, animated discussions between Scott and me.
Yes.
Not to the point where either of us had to hang up, but sometimes it was.
Yeah, I mean, different philosophies, but by doing this, we get the best result. Yeah.
Just because you're kind of intimating here that ads is not a good system. The ads manager.
That's
Ads
right.
Factory.
Ads Factory, sorry.
It's a great.
I'm tossing up between a few different, going down that path now. I think there was another one that I installed to test, how to go to yet. Does it do what it does well, or are you coming across these problems just doing its core functionality of being an ads system?
Ads Factory probably is a classified ad system. Does a decent job of being a classified ad. Doesn't do a great job. If I was to build it, I first thing I'd do is build a component for taxonomy so I can tag. There's no real good tagging system in Joomla that I know of. That's just me. Taxonomy. Taxonomy is very important. It's how you classify items. So if you're dealing with a stroller has a manufacturer, a weight capacity, a color. These are all descriptive terms that might be helpful in the search. Rather than, and I'd say most of us in this room probably remember that going through some of the classifieds, and you spend a good hour going through merchandise for sale, trying to find that item you wanted. And read all the fine print, and I remember a friend of mine, he had a big, huge magnifying glass, and then that's why he'd have to look at the little print and go through the whole page. And you could see well, but this way he saw it this big instead of this big. So if you're building a classified ad system, you want a real quick solution, you want to spend $125, get zero support, Ads Factory.
Yeah, that
Okay. Ads Manager is a little better. I first experienced Ads Manager my first Joomla site for a site that's still up in 1.0. It's having a litigation issue. But myself and Gary Mort, who's wandering around here, Gary, by the way, is the founding person of the New York City Joomla Users Group. And he's like savant, he knows everything there is. We built a CSV import tool for that. So that's another good classified ad system. That, I believe, has the functionality for you to sell your item directly from the ad itself. And in addition to you selling ads to the person. I believe the right tool for the right job. So if you came to me and say, here's what I need. I tell people, forget Joomla or WordPress. Don't even tell me about other websites. Tell me what you need done. Then let me ask you more questions to find out what you really truly need. Then I find what works for you. If you go through the JED, and I remember the first time I went through the JED, I started around 10 o'clock, and I finished about 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was, I went through all 1,200 components and made lots of notes of really neat components. Now there's over 10,000 components. There's no way I'm looking through everything in the JED anymore. Granted, of the 10,000 components, extensions, I'm not sure if they count every extension by itself, or if you have one for 1.5, 1.6, 2.5 is 3. I don't know if they're doing that or not. But you still have over 3,000 to 10,000 components. My suggestion is you set up a couple of Joomla sandboxes on your local desktop or on your server that you can blow out. Install the component, plain vanilla Joomla, nothing else. Store the one extension you want, take a look at the functionality, then look at the other one and find out if that meets your needs. Then you figure out what percentage it meets. It meets 80% of your needs. Then you figure out your budget to get the other 20%, and is it worth it? Sometimes that extra 20% is not worth the money it takes. Sometimes it just is. Sometimes you say, I have to have this. So if you're trying to have a system, I don't know what you're trying to sell. Are they tangibles or intangibles? What you were mentioning, you want to be able to sell between two different party members.
Yeah, there's a couple of different sort of back burner projects. That's one of the idea that a registered member of the site, probably very similar to here, but basically log in and say, right, I've got this series of books I want to sell. Enter a classified advert. Pretty much anything what you do here. Basically, the other registered member would be the buyer. Click, you want to buy this, and then out, I think that system there was going to be no sort of third party collecting of a fee, so it's just a member to member thing. But there's a second project that we sort of asked about, which is almost again identical, and this is where someone wants to make money out of being the middleman. So it's
If you have two members of the site, and they just classify where one wants to sell, and they can contact each other, and you don't get involved, I'd go with Ads Manager, because that gives you all the functionality. If you don't have e-commerce where they click and buy it, and I don't remember if Ads Manager has it or not. I know they just released a new version. If you have a little bit more budget, Ads Factory is the ability to make better looking templates, but they have to learn how to do smart templates, which means go and buy the book from PAX and learn yet another system. If you want something like this, you should speak to me and Henk later, because we can modify this, because this is becoming part of a larger platform that I'm building, which I'm still, part of it's the concepts, part of it's using Joomla to what it is. And I gotta see what works best, and what works for me today is probably not what's gonna work for me 2 years from now, or even 6 months. It's gonna constantly evolving. If you don't evolve, you're stuck where you are. Look at Joomla. Look how they're pushing Joomla. 3.0 is supposed to be out this weekend, but it's okay to be next week. That starts pushing in, and they're trying to clean up a lot of the problems and telling people, look, you can't do it the proper way anymore. It causes too many headaches for everyone else.
You can't do that.
There's a lot of poor code in some of a lot of the older things. And when I say poor code, I'm not casting aspersions. We're trying to bang out the code as fast as possible. And very often we say, okay, we'll get to that later. And the later never comes because you have so many new problems to go after. And then after a while, you get really a lot of buggy code in there that causes lots of other issues. Now, if you have sites that don't have a lot of traffic, then you don't have to worry about most of those issues. If you start getting a lot of traffic, and every time that page loads, it takes an extra 10 milliseconds, and you have 100,000 page loads, those milliseconds start adding up, and start causing you problems with your server. And that brings us to a whole new thing. I don't think we have any sessions on servers per se tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to concentrate on things that if you're a Joomla person, you need to know, then not Joomla. I'm doing error logs. Henk is doing the shell. How to create directories, how to change permissions. I'm doing, if you look at error log and if a page is not looking, a white page of death, well, go look at PHP logs, go look at your Joomla logs, and find out what's causing it. Where's the problem coming from? There's a lot more to just the Joomla site. It's kind of like the presentation I try to give. It's not how to use a component, it's not how to do something. Some real world things that we're stuck with and how we figured it out. And except for one person, our solution is probably not going to be your solution. But it helps you think how to plan things out, what to look for. What other questions do we have? We have another 15 minutes. If any questions? Doesn't think there's any Joomla questions or other issues you're having. I think between the two of us, we can answer almost any question.
Related to this?
Yeah.
Well, even related to this,
Yeah.
I think that by now, Ads Factory, Simple Caddy, the PM system, Joomla 2.5, we do have a system that works. It is totally unsuited for anybody else. I would qualify it as a sheep with 5 legs. As a
The
sheep.
sheep with 5 legs.
But it works.
Yes.
It gives me the wool that I need. And that's it. Who cares about the 5th leg? But if we want to make something more out of this, we will have to streamline all the code. Take out everything that is superfluous to what we need. Concentrate on the basic functionality, then regroup everything together and template that up to something slick in design.
Yeah.
If we want to do that, that's a big if for me yet. The thing is that we need to know if somebody will be interested in this. one customer or two customers, that is not going to be it.
Yeah.
But I see this model of what you've got here, and I see a lot. I live in a relatively small town in southwest of Australia, and a lot of these small towns, people are setting up Facebook groups, little buy and sell groups on Facebook, which is a bad solution, I think, to that issue. I think this is the perfect solution for that little environment where you might have a town where it isn't worthwhile putting an ad in a paper.
Right.
It's not worthwhile putting it on eBay if you don't want to go down that path. The only options people in that sort of situation have got, and scattered throughout America and Europe, is thousands of little towns like where I am, is a pin up on a notice board or these Facebook type things, and I think this is it's almost a perfect product for that little community portal type thing that people would be using.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure of that. That's not my point. My point was, and Scott already knows about that the mix of code that we have here, I wouldn't support it.
Yeah, I wouldn't support it either. If
This
we
is a
don't know
patch.
intimately, it would be a nightmare for anyone. If you don't know intimately involved, it would be a nightmare support. We know exactly what we've done.
So the concept's good as the code needs to be
Right,
the concept.
but
Yes.
if you ever prototype, and I learned my prototyping in circuit boards, if you look at the first dozen versions of circuit boards, they first become about 10 or 15 little breadboards with wires jumping all over the place. And you can see the progression, and I've done circuit boards where 6 generations later, it went from a board this big, now we're to a board around this big, everything's really clean. We swapped out lots of resistors and transistors and so forth to 1 or 2 chips. And we've cleaned it up, lowered the power. Look at cell phones, look at everything else. It's the same progression. Unless you have a huge budget and time, there's no way you can redo all of that in one shot. So it's a nightmarish code. It's kind of spaghetti. No, I don't say spaghetti code, but I'd say there are a lot of jumpers all over the place. But now once you know what the customer wants, then you go back and start cleaning everything up. So you know what? For instance, the Smarty template, the way they do some things makes sense for what they're doing, but it makes CSS a nightmare because it treats all the custom fields as one block, one ID. So if you have different size fields, it's a mess, and there's no way to move because they all move together. There's no way to give a class to each field. So what do you do about that? Well, you can go hack their code and change it so that every time you add a new custom field, it changes this ID, which is probably the best way of doing things. If I was doing the one doing Ads Factory, or rebuild it so each field stands by itself. Since we know all the fields we need, and we're not going to be adding a lot more fields, for that purpose we can do it that way. If I was building a component as a universal tool, I can't do that. We just have no idea if it's what you want. So, quick question: do they have in your area of Australia? Do they have Sara Lee chocolate cake? There are tiny cakes and chocolate.
With cakes?
Sara Lee.
Yeah, that's everywhere.
Okay, I
I
need to
don't
speak
buy
to you
those.
because they don't have them here anymore. It's my favorite cake in the whole world.
I live in a town that has like 2 of the most famous bakeries in our state, so it's like Sarah Lee doesn't buy that.
But I used to love the little rectangular, probably about this big, little rectangular frozen cakes. They were really good.
Yeah, and you eat them frozen in summer too.
Sometimes, yeah. And then the best part is that there'd be little residue left on the bottom of the tin, and that'd be the scrapings. And there'd be a fight between my brother and sister and I over who gets the scrapings.
Something that made me feel homesick.
Yeah. But there's no more Sara Lee. It started in either Brooklyn or Chicago, and now all Sara Lee makes in this country are underwear. I think they have cakes still, though.
Edible underwear?
Don't look at me.
That's another
I'm not
thing.
from here.
Yeah. Well, they own Hanes, a few other brands. So that's what. Any questions about this or anything else in Joomla?
I've got a totally unrelated Joomla question.
Okay.
I've scratched my head at for a while. I've got one Joomla site. It's 2.5.4. All my other Joomla sites, I'm getting notifications, new notifications. This one still sits there saying your site's up to date. I've got no idea why. I can't work out why.
What's the
Is
problem?
it difficult? Pardon?
What's the problem you're having with it? It's
Yeah, the auto updater. Well, the update button, you get that little icon that says your site needs updating, your core update or your module update.
Is it on the server by itself?
It's so I've got a dedicated server, and so it's sitting on the same server with probably about 20 other sites. All the other sites bring up your site needs updating, there's Joomla core update, click, no worries, update it goes. This one site still says it's up to date at 2.5.4.
Looks like a permissions problem to me.
Permissions?
Yeah.
I know it's a site I've probably locked up as I may have just changed one folder. I should know it's the most secure site of all the ones I've got. So,
Well, you could unsecure it for 5 seconds, see what happens.
yeah.
It's not in 5 seconds that they're going to hack that site and turn it upside down.
Yeah.
But you set it to reasonably, let's say, usable permissions. 777 is not the best of ideas, but do that for a few minutes and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope I know. It's been one of those problems that hasn't sort of been grinding on me until the point now, so I hang on a couple of updates out of date with it. So.
Are you running, I'm assuming it's a lab stack. Are you running SU on the server?
That's my server dude's job. We don't use user ID, that's one thing, but it doesn't affect any other.
Well, in your com file, you want to make sure that the owner, if you go to HTTP.com file, make sure that the owner is both the user ID of that directory and Apache.
Yep. Yeah.
And to make sure, because we had a similar problem that we, just lazy, we just, I just shell in a copy and doing it, I wasn't paying attention. And sure enough, I copied the first example that didn't have Apache in it, instead of going through public to do everything. And sure enough, that was getting lots of problems.
I think I may have just been a bit overzealous in permissions.
Yeah.
I know that that's the site that spend more time customizing permissions on folders than others, simply because there has been hacked once before, and it was my laziness of not changing the permissions.
And we're just about done. Not done.
We're starting at 4:30.
Okay.
I'm starting in there, so it's about 10 after 4, so
Okay.
thanks.
Yeah, my journey in Joomla started because I wanted to do a site called myfilm.com, which is sadly on Blogger, and it's on my list of things to do. I started researching CMSs and I learned about Joomla, and then I couldn't get it to work very well on ISS, so I had to go back to my earlier days which I forgot on Linux, and I tried to get a Linux server up, and it was just forced to run one thing after the other. But I'm still doing this. Okay, now I learn to run a Linux server, do it well, and we have a bunch of servers. Well, I don't want to do the same process again, so I'm using Puppet, and Puppet is a way to manage servers. But then Puppet's all command line, so we're now putting in on Foreman, which gives me a view of everything. Now I have dev servers, I have production servers, and I'm losing track of what's on where. So I'm going to modify Foreman so I can keep track of what's on which and start integrating Git into it. So I have developers around the world, so I keep track of all this, so I have to keep it all up here, because as I add more and more complexity, I'm losing touch with some things. And so, but once you start down this road, I would say it's, a gateway technology. You start learning more, then okay, well now I'm on a Joomla site, now if you're getting tremendous amounts of hits and traffic, then the next question for you is, are they authenticated or not authenticated? If they're authenticated, then you want to go back to the platform, split off the authentication to its own server, so it can be happy. If you're non-authenticated, you can speed up the back end by running Xcache, but you can speed up the front end by running Varnish, and putting Varnish on an Nginx server, which is a much faster web server that reads the pages off your typical Apache. I know I'm losing some people here, but no.
We tried Varnish, engines thing, tried quite a few different things we've used over time.
Yeah, speak to me. We're getting it to work. So write down Varnish. Start. If the mastery thing says it might deal what goes on. So if you want to expand out from where you are, you may not want to, but you start having an idea of how your server does And one of the advantages, you'll find out why being on shared hosting is a really bad idea.
Shared hosting.
Yeah, very, very bad. Unless you want a slow site and you want it to be hacked, then you can stay with shared hosting. And even though Bluehost is one of our hosts and they do a good job, if you do a brochure site, shared hosting is fine. There's not a problem with it. Brochure site is a site that has no authentication. You're putting up for your local PTA or putting up for a local store, and they're just having sites on it, information. Then shared platform is fine. If you get hacked, it's not that big of a deal. Although a lot of your hacks are phishing pages and zombie pages to attack other sites.
Something like HostGator bad, huh?
I'm not a fan of HostGator, but Henk is a big fan of HostGator.
Well, I've never had any, let's say, significant problems with them, apart from the fact that they lost my passwords. But that's it, no problem there. But to say that they are wonderful and that you can do everything that you need to do, shell access is limited. So you don't shell access. If you have it in your package, it's limited. You don't have access to all the commands that you need, because some of those commands, they are server-wide.
They're
Server-wide.
Oh.
So if you do it, then it goes for everybody else on that server, so they cannot allow for that.
And if you take credit cards on your website and you're going to share, so you got to make sure you're PCI compliant. If when they click on the card and you go off to authorize.net or PayPal, then you're fine. It's not on your server. But, as you move to different sites, you start going off in 45 directions of things to know.
Right.
Well, you want to accept credit cards on your site. One thing is that you need your own IP address.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't get a certificate. A certificate, if you don't have a certificate, you will not find my credit card on your site. Because anything that is not HTTPS is not secure.
HTTPS?
Yes, that's secured. For that, if you want that, you need a certificate delivered by Equifax. Well, there's a few of them.
Yeah.
And they deliver that certificate tied to your your domain name and the IP address of the server.
You need that if you have get card numbers.
Yeah.
Right. GoDaddy has an inexpensive version of it. Bluehost has an expensive version of it. And basically, you put a little token on a little set of code on your server that sends a signal back to their verification, says it's the same IP address as you registered. If you go to VeriSign or more expensive ones, they'll actually come down to your place and see that you are physically make sure you really have a real presence and your bank accounts. But a lot depends on the amount of dollar transactions what you're doing. The PTAs I wouldn't be overly concerned about because everyone knows each other.
PTA.
Yeah. But one thing you really should always check is your server logs. Make sure no one's uploading information. We keep on getting sites that people are uploading, and especially WordPress, base64 hacks, which play havoc, and you don't see the hacks. You don't see them on your site, but there are people who have fake versions of PayPal on your site, or they're using your server to attack other servers.
Question, are you manually going through those error logs, or do you have something trigger, like something happens and you get some kind of notification?
Well, if something really goes wrong, you will notice it.
Yeah.
The more, let's say, hidden hacks, you really have to go and hunt for them.
Yeah.
In a Joomla site, one of the things that I like, well, you have to buy it, otherwise it's not good. It's Akiba, not the backup system, but the admin tools. They have one little tool in there that is PHP file scanner. So it scans all the PHP files because that's where most of the danger is. The first time they will scare the hell out of you because they will mark all the files as being suspect.
Yeah.
That's not the best of ideas. So you mark them all as being good if you know that they are all good. And from there on, if you scan every day or twice a day, it will say, hey, wait a minute, there's an extra PHP file on your site, on your server.
Right.
So the first thing to do is go and look at that one.
Right. So,
Or they say, okay, well, this or that PHP file has been modified. Now, if it's on a server where you are uploading your own components, well, you know what that is. But if it is in a template file, most famous is the index.php file.
yeah.
That's definitely not a file that you're going to modify by yourself. So that's a hack. If it's a hack, you need to close the hole, otherwise they will be back.
No. No, I use RS Firewall from RS Joomla. That's the same functionality.
RS,
Firewall. And as Henk says, the first time it treats everything as suspects, what you do is you put a very clean copy up, perfectly clean copy, load the component, do the scan, so you know that's perfect,
Right.
and then move on from there.
So it's one of the first steps that you do on a live site.
So the next thing it does is we have on our servers, we have an update log. So we know anything files are updated to our servers. So we get a listing, and then we know which IP addresses our developers use. So anything, we filter that out. So anything that's not from there, we treat as suspect. And I have what's called a Robert, and that's my business partner in the server business. And he's like a watchdog, and he says, I spend half my time going through this. And it's one of the things we're trying to alleviate from him, is to automate the process. And you know, if we have the budget, we can start building heuristic algorithms that will track everything. So don't have the budget, you can't afford the software.
Scott, did you say the anything digital just released some sort of a online monitoring system?
What, for a site being up?
Sorry, I saw the email about 6 hours before I fly out of here, so I hadn't had a good play with it yet, but it was a cost per month thing where you could basically have a dashboard with all your websites in one spot. And then basically I think it was monitoring what was going on.
Yeah,
what changes.
there's a couple of them. I use something called siteuptime.com. It's for $5 a month for 3 sites. It's worth it. There are much better systems.
See if I can get the email here. I couldn't get the network before.
Personally, I'm building a system that will monitor all my Joomla sites at one spot and tell me which ones to be updated, no matter where they are in the world, from any of my clients. Because besides my own service, they want to host at Rackspace or some other place I have no objections. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. So, you know, as I get more sites, more dev sites, I'm losing track. I can't keep track of it anymore in my mind. And I'm trying to build an inventory system, site management tool we're trying to put together. And you have Drupal also, and Magento, so they all have the same issues. They all need to be updated constantly. And now you have,
Watchful.ly.
what's it called?
Watchful.ly.
Watchful.ly.
Yeah.
There's another one someone told me before, earlier today, called cronweb.com that does crons, a cron job, and it also has a pings your site. So they're available. There are a lot of them.
and what does it do again? Did you say it pings it?
Pings and make sure your site's alive.
Yeah, well, it makes sure that your server responds.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sure that your site is alive. Your site can be dead and buried, and the server still responds.
Right.
So it's only half of the job.
Well, there's also other ones that you can put a little item on your page, little token. It'll ping that, go to that page. If it doesn't get a response, then knows your site's down. I had a client that site was down for 2 weeks, and somehow he expected me to know it. I said, well, how am I supposed to? Don't you watch these things? No. You're plain vanilla hosting. If you want a higher package, we'll monitor your sites and we'll let you know there's a
Is it a
problem.
good idea to get a higher level package?
I don't know what your needs are.
Depends if you need it.
Yeah.
No, I mean for like security purposes.
I don't know. don't know what type of traffic you get to your site, I don't know what type of users. I
I'm
mean,
just thinking of security.
are you taking credit cards on your site?
But we're gonna use PayPal.
If you use PayPal and you click and you go to PayPal, then you don't have to worry about that. All you have to worry about is someone putting malicious code on your site to make it look like you're selling Viagra or to use you to attack other people.
Well, the biggest problem with that is not so much that people come to you and claim the Viagra because you didn't sell it. The problem is that your hard-earned
Google.
time for getting into the first page of Google is gone.
Yeah.
Google is the one going to punish you, not the site, and they are not going after the site selling the Viagra. They are going after you because you have all those hundreds of links to those Viagra sites. That is what the problem is. So if you have a site that is supposed to be selling a lot of things and you are making your money out of that, take credit cards or not, that's not the point. You have spent a lot of time and effort to get into Google and to make sure that you get a lot of traffic for a lot of customers. As soon as you reach a certain level, your site is becoming interesting for those hackers. And they put up things that only the Google bot will see.
Yeah.
Even you, if you go and look to the source code of your pages, you will not see it. So you have to look at it as if you were a Google bot. And then you find suddenly that there is 400 or 500 links on your page appended at the bottom of your site. Google is going to punish you for that. So that means that your business is going down thanks to somebody else just putting a little code on your site. So that is something that you have to monitor. But it always needs a change to one of your PHP files. So if you have a file monitor, like Akiba admin tools, for example, there's others around. There are others around. If you have a tool like that and you regularly verify it, check it, you're good. You're good to go.
All right, well, let's go
Next
over to
one's
the,
starting, if you don't mind, surveys.
Yep.
yes,
Surveys.
yes,
Do you have any?
there's surveys.
Thank you.
There's one on the table there, sir.
I'm gonna refrain,
They're on all the tables. That's good.
I'm gonna
You
refrain,
guys need one? No.
I'm gonna refrain from filling out one about myself.
I'll fill it out for each vote. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Maybe you guys know. If I want to have, I have a site, general